If everyone had the same access to the same libraries, the same resources, we wouldn't have the injustice that we're currently seeing.
Simplistic form, environmental justice advocates for the access for healthy air, water, and soil. Historically, low-income Black, Indigenous, Brown people of color have not had access to healthy air, water, or soil, and so it really highlights the inequities due to systemic racism that have caused these injustices to continue permeating in many communities.
Put simply, environmental justice focuses on the fair treatment and distribution of environmental resources, benefits, and burdens. Our first priority is to feel safe and secure, so environmental injustice takes away that safety and affects every single aspect of a person's life. If someone doesn't have access to clean food or clean water or clean air, their physical and mental health will drastically suffer. Environmental injustice puts people at much higher risk for poor health due to systems that are just out of their own control.
I think it greatly affects people's mental and physical health. Mentally, if you are constantly at a disadvantage, that is going to affect you. It's going to affect your self-value, your self-worth, how you perceive yourself in society. More importantly, that will also manifest itself in a physical environment. You will probably suffer more anxiety, more depression, and all of that is related back to how you see yourself, which again is connected. These are all chain reactions of each other. So social injustice, environmental injustice will affect you and how you perceive yourself.
This can look into various ways of how communities are designed, whether you're located near a freeway, you experience a lot of environmental pollutants from car exhaustion. You also face a lot of noise pollution. What ends up happening long-term for many low-income communities having to live nearby these injustices is the fact that they have to be exposed to having disrupted sleep cycles due to either fireworks, due to the freeway, due to traffic, especially even too when you're drinking water. Being exposed to chemicals can affect brain development, and has been studied that, especially within children. So there's really a lot of adverse injustices that can happen.
Examples of environmental justice issues in Los Angeles County. LA County is huge. It's a gigantic county, but certain examples, I would have to say education, having resources that are not readily available to all people. Where you live, so a lot of power plants, highways, those are usually installed in areas of lower income housing, and then they are exposed to pollution. That pollution will affect your health. You will be inhaling toxins. Those toxins will put you at a disadvantage for your lung development as a child. So think of that long term. When you have the wildfires in California, you have COVID, of the fact that they were exposed to pollution from childhood.
Most specifically in the San Fernando Valley, most specifically the cities of San Fernando, Pacoima, and Sylmar have highest rates of environmental inequities, and these are predominantly low-income Black and Brown communities that don't have access to clean air, and this has become an increasingly talked about issue of like who gets to have these amenities and who doesn't, and so that has been a really ongoing issue, especially in downtown LA with oil refineries.
Ignorance. Some people just don't know. That's why I do my webcast. I don't think anyone should be blamed or shamed, hence the tagline I have, no blaming, no shaming. People just don't know. Certain people live in, their little bubble, and they're happy in there, and they don't want to look outside. What I do is try to bring this awareness to people, have maybe uncomfortable conversations in a healthy environment, so no screaming, no yelling. But that is probably one of the biggest causes, is people are just unaware, or they choose not to think about it. And that is no longer okay. It is no longer okay to say that doesn't affect me directly, so I'm not going to think about that.
I think the biggest causes of environmental justice is colonialism. I think this is something that is often not talked about. In the sense of Western social media spaces and academic spaces, it's often really framed through the polluter lens or a corporation, but it's honestly the system that has allowed for these corporate powers to continue poisoning low-income communities of color.
There are a multitude of causes for environmental injustice. Systemic racism, unchecked capitalism, lack of representation at all levels in our government officials and people of power holding on to the idea that this is how things have always been, so this is what we should do, are just a few of the reasons that environmental injustice is perpetuated in our country. Extreme wealth has allowed for environmental injustice to flourish, and it pushes the burdens of the climate crisis often onto those who are least responsible. Stopping environmental injustice isn't something, unfortunately, that is going to happen overnight. What it takes is evaluating one's own privilege, holding your representatives accountable. This can look like emailing, calling them, voting if you're old enough to do so, protesting, joining local organizations, and really just getting involved in any way you can. Environmental injustice isn't going to stop because one person speaks up. It is going to actually elicit meaningful systemic changes when a large group of people come together and fight for what they believe.
Stopping environmental injustice, renewable energies, non-polluting resources. We are starting on that. The infrastructure has to completely change. That's going to require financing. That is going to require private entities to participate in public-private partnerships, get rid of the pollution-bearing power plants, change our entire transportation structure. So it's not just electric cars we need, or even hydrogen cars. We need these long transportation trucks, vehicles to run on clean energy, including trains. Trains are often in areas, they run on diesel, they're quite polluting, and the tracks are put through lower income communities as well.
Talking about it, and I would say really looking into doing your research of where's your environmental justice organization, because if you don't know, it's a little bit concerning on that end, and I think I would suggest people looking into it
as well. How do you think climate change is going to affect our future? We are going to have to change everything that we do. Where we get our materials, where we get our supplies, how we transport our supplies, all of that is going to change because climate is getting hotter, drier in certain areas, wetter in certain areas. We have storm surges in the southeast. We have wildfires in the Pacific Northwest. Sea level is rising. Ports are going to change. Where we grow food, crops, materials such as cotton, all of that's going to change. So we need to start adapting very quickly to that change.
I would say, it has a lot of effects, right? With heat waves, who gets to afford electricity, who gets to even have the opportunity to have an air conditioner. So this is actually going to really punish a lot of low-income Black, Indigenous people of color, who has the ability to run away, who has the ability to move, who has the ability to even enter disaster relief camps without feeling fear of being deported.
Continue to cause the most harm to BIPOC and other underserved communities. Clean water, clean air, and global food supply chains will be further disrupted, resulting in a disruption through all stages of one's life. And right now, while that it may only be affecting people in underserved communities, it is going to affect every single human on the face of this planet.
Everything is affected by everything else. We have to start paying attention to the fact that contamination, pollution, that will all have a chain reaction to our physical well-being, our structures, where we live, how we live, where we get our supplies from. Everything is connected. This is not a siloed situation.
Sustainability is a way to work with the planet rather than disregard the environmental impacts of our actions. Placing a sustainability lens on means of production and consumption will help us understand how our actions and the actions of major governments and corporations affect the planet. From there, we can move forward in a way that helps restore the damage humans have already caused and lay the framework for a more sustainable future.
I think it's really encompassing holistic lens of how we create circular relationships with ourselves and our community and the land.
My motto, no shaming, no blaming, every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. So a lot of people get overwhelmed with sustainability and they think, I have to change everything. That's not true. Small changes will have a great effect. So if all you know how to do is stop using paper towels, stop using paper towels. If you don't want to use plastic wrap in the kitchen, don't use plastic wrap in the kitchen. These are small itty bitty steps that will have a large impact if everybody adopts it. And it will create a snowball effect. As you get used to doing these things, you're going to make more changes, and then things will become easier and you won't be as intimidated. And the greatest message to end it with, please don't yell at people. If you're yelling at people saying, how dare you and shame on you and you're an awful person for not being sustainable, it's just going to make someone angry. It's going to make them feel bad about themselves. Often when that happens, people will retaliate in the opposite way and be more wasteful. So positive communication, friendly communication, just encourage people as best as you can.
I would say not focusing on being someone, but being yourself, because I think that when you really tune into yourself and listen to your own values and your passions, you're really able to create sustainable work that is actually true to you and not being untrue to others or your friends.
If there is just one thing that I can tell to the youth of this world and our nation, it is that your voice is your most powerful asset. Don't be afraid to speak up about what you are passionate about and fight for environmental justice. Learn as much as you can, but don't get held up because you feel like you don't know everything. The world doesn't need a handful of people doing everything. It needs billions of people doing something or anything at all. Your voice is your power, so use it to create awareness, educate, protest, vote, and invite others to join with you in the fight for environmental justice.